we are back again with a lecture. This time we are going to have a look at, well, still input, but using the text editing controller instead. It's quite possible to use the ways that we've seen before, namely to use a normal string variable and set that to each and every part of a form, for example. But it's actually better to do using the text editing controller. It's still the case that you need to have a lot of variables, one for each input, but it is still the preferred way of doing this. So we can have a look here at the application, several inputs it's called, and yeah, we can just add in this. Let's start with a name over here, and it's Jarin, and we have an alias, of course, which is Mandalorian. And if you wonder about everything that's working down here, is of course that we are checking for anything that's happening, key presses with the mouse, and so on. Din Jarin at mandalore.ml. Comment can be just one. This is the way. Well, like that. And when we press submit, everything is just copied down here. Great, that's how it works. And we could have created this just as we did before. But in this case, we are going to go for what's called a text controller instead. So in our state that we have here, we have a number of these text editing controllers, which are then called name controller, alias controller, and so on. All of these will be bound together with the input field that we're going to use. As we see down here, we just have a method that's available for us in order to create the name, the message itself. And if we go down to the build method where we create our user interface and connect it, we see that for example, the text fields that we are going to use, we have a new property called controller, to which we point to that specific object, name controller in this case, which is a text editing controller, just as before. Well, in the same way as we did before, but this time we are doing it via the controller property instead of just working with variables. Other than that, this isn't very strange. We have a column, we have these different text fields, and we have a little button that just when pressed shows the results underneath. So that's basically how it works. It's so more or less the same way, but we have another a lot of extra stuff that gets down underneath when we do it this way. However, when working with forms, we usually want to have them validated and grouped and so on as well. And the way to do that is to, most often at least, put all the text into a form, which is kind of a container for these text fields. And it's not only text field, you have any kind of input widget as well, of course. And to be able to validate, we set a global key for identifying this specific form. The global key can actually be used in order to identify anything globally, if you like. And then we have a new property called validator, which for each text field will do the validation itself. But we are now going to use form-specific widgets. So we will have a text form field instead of a normal text field, and so on. These are just convenience classes, so it's perfectly all right to use anything else if you like as well. There are examples of checkboxes and so on. And then the form state is used with the global key to identify these widgets that we're going to use. But let's move over to the example. And at a first look, it looks exactly the same as it did before. That's because it's mostly the same. But if we press the submit button, we'll see that we get all of these red messages saying that, well, you didn't enter anything. And then if we enter for a few of them, Dinjarin, like this, we say, for example, the Mandalorian, like that. But we give a din at mando.ml instead. We try to submit now, and we'll see that these two are now okay, but this one is still not okay because it doesn't use the @ sign and we don't have a comment. Looking at the code, it's mostly the same. We still need these controllers, but we need to create a global key for this form itself for us to be able to remember it. The show result is exactly the same, but inside of the build method, we create a form instead. So we know that this is a form that we're going to use, and we can have several forms in different places. But in order to identify the different forms, we use this form key. Then we have everything as before. We put in a single child scroll view for safety, as it could be too much. And then we have a column. And then we have the text form field instead of just a text field. It still has the controller and the decoration, but then also this validator property, which takes a value, which is a value that we put here. And for most of them, we just do this simple check if it is empty. If it is empty, we say, please enter name. Otherwise, we return null. We could do something else. This works the same way for all of them, except for the email, where we do a really simple check. We could have done a much more thorough check, of course, but we check that we have an @ sign and that we have the periods of the dots available. And if we don't, we say that you should enter a valid email, as we can see over here. But then the rest of the program is exactly the same as we saw previously. The thing about state is that it is something that's discussed quite a lot in the broader Flutter community, because this might not be the most elegant way of handling this. So instead, there popped up quite a lot of different third-party libraries to handle state and forms, but state on the whole. So for example, if you are looking around, you will probably see information about block, about riverpod, provider, getx, and name a few. There are plenty of videos and blog posts and so on about the state of states in Flutter. And if you're looking specifically at building forms, there are things like Flutter hooks and Flutter form builder, for example, that can help you to create forms in an easier way with not as much strange or so stuff, or at least typing as much as we need to do currently. However, in this lecture and in this course, we are going to be satisfied with the way that we do it as standard in Flutter. But please feel free and have a look at something else than the normal state management that's available in Flutter. But that's it for now. So until we meet the next time, have a good day, or whatever. It might not be a complete day. See you in the next one. Bye bye.